a special video from PE this morning because what would Sunday morning be without our dad jokes? So let's go ahead and watch this video.
There's the supermoon behind us. Hope you're doing well. Hey, I have a question for you. What did the sushi say to the bee? Wasabi. 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 Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so we are super excited that you are going to be blessed with our friends, Pastor Derek Boivin and his wife Jen. And I don't know if any of the boys are with them or Lily. But anyway, just wanted to say that we miss you all. We'll see you next week. And you guys are going to be blessed with the word this morning. So give him a warm welcome as he comes. And I know it's going to be good. I look forward to watching online. Okay. Bye.
Can you hear me now? Here we go. Awesome. Well, it's really good to be here with you today. My wife was not able to come. My daughter is heading off to camp this morning, and so she had to get her there. But my son Liam is here, and I'm happy because I haven't seen him in a little while. He's been traveling, and on his way to Des Moines, they dropped him off here in Council Bluffs, and so it's good to see him and be with Josiah again. So, well, good morning to you. You look great. The church looks awesome. Your parking lot is amazing. Good job to you who have given to that and were part of that project. I know you have really been hitting the pavement hard, so it's good to be here with you. I want to give you greetings from Pastor Guy, our network superintendent. He just wants to let you know as well that he's proud of you, he's proud of this church, and we just know that we're just going to keep hearing incredible reports of how you're impacting Council Bluffs and Omaha for Jesus, and we are just believing for incredible, incredible things for you. So if you would, bow your heads, let's just open up in a word of prayer, and we're just going to commit this time to Jesus. Lord, we just want to say to you today that we love you, and we are so thankful for salvation. We're thankful that you offer it to everyone equally. Just like what was said this morning, Lord, that you're no respecter of persons. That doesn't mean that you don't respect our dignity. It means that you treat us all the same. And so, God, I just want to tell you this morning on behalf of all of us that are gathered here today that you are an awesome God, and we are so thankful for you. In Jesus' name, amen. It is good to be with you again. I think I've been here once. I was here for Pastor Eric's election and for a couple of events, network events that have been held in your sanctuary, and it's always good to be here. I appreciate your pastor. I was just with him a couple weeks ago at a pastor's retreat, a camp out, and I just want to let you know that you have a pastor that loves Jesus. And he loves this church, he loves his family, and he loves the Word of God. You are a blessed family. So I just want to let you know that we are proud of everything that we're hearing out of Creekside, and if there's anything that we can do to help, we're always at the ready for you. Today, I want to bring your attention to the book of Acts chapter 12. In Acts chapter 12, it's a passage of Scripture that is really dear to my heart. What's happening is, as a little bit of background, the Herod is starting to really turn up the heat, and he's persecuting the church. James has just been killed, and now Herod's like, look, if you're going to continue to meet together, if you're going to continue to prioritize what Yahweh has said, if you're going to continue preaching freedom, well, then I'm going to come after the church. And you got to remember that the book of Acts is really a chronicle of the fulfillment of the Great Commission, in the sense that Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel, starting in Jerusalem, going into Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. The book of Acts is really saying how the gospel got from Jerusalem to Rome, and we know it hasn't happened yet. And so now what is happening is that the church is undergoing this persecution. Who's going to win out? Are the words of Jesus going to play out, or is this church going to be stomped out in its infancy? So the church is growing, but now blood is being spilt. The government of the day is coming against the church. And Herod Agrippa stood between the here and the there. You know what here and there is. You are here, but God has mapped out a there. The question is, how do we get from here to there? What is God doing today that is going to propel Creekside Church to become the church that He has called you to be? How are you going to get from here to there to become the church that does what God has for you to do? What is it going to take for this church to really experience a whole new level of ministry in this community and in this area? Because I believe that God has big things for Creekside in Council Bluffs. I believe that He started this church to fulfill a purpose. And I don't know that He has completely fulfilled that purpose yet. Do you know why I think that? Because you're still here. There's still people getting saved. There's still young people going to camp. He's still baptizing people with the Spirit. He's still empowering people to fulfill what God has called. So let's turn our attention to the Word. In Acts chapter 12, we're going to start reading from verse 5, and we're going to go to 17. Can we read those 12 verses of Scripture together? This is what it says. Okay, and like I told you, Peter is now in prison. I'm going to read from verse 1 instead. About that time, Herod Agrippa began to persecute some believers in the church. He had the apostle James, John's brother, killed with a sword. And when Herod saw how much this pleased the Jewish people, he also arrested Peter. And this took place during the Passover celebration. Then he imprisoned him, placing him under the guard of 4 squads of soldiers each. Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover. But while Peter was in prison, the church prayed earnestly for him. Now, let me just pause for 1 second here and point out that as he's painting this bleak picture of persecution, he puts an opposite there. He says, while all this is happening, the church is earnestly praying. The church isn't hiding. The church isn't just hoping. The church is being active. And as we read these words, as the original readers would have read them, you would have felt a certain tension. What's going to happen? Is the church going to win out? Is Herod going to win? Are the words of Jesus going to be fulfilled? Well, we'll read on. The night before Peter was placed on trial, get this, he was asleep. And when you read the Scriptures, when the people of God are asleep, I want you to interpret that a certain way. I want you to understand that in a certain way. When the people of God are asleep, it indicates a deep trust in God. Even though things are going poorly, even though the situation is intimidating, I can rest just like Jesus rested in a boat in the middle of the storm. Restlessness, or not being allowed to sleep, is really a sign of mistrust or anxiety. Well, Peter was asleep and he was shackled. This is what it says. Suddenly, he was asleep, fastened with 2 chains between 2 soldiers, and others stood guard at the prison gate. Peter was not getting away. That's what it's telling us. Verse 7, suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and an angel of the Lord stood before Peter, and the angel struck him on the side to waken him and said, "Quick, get up." And the chains fell off his wrists. Then the angel told him, "Get dressed and put on your sandals." And he did. "Now put on your coat and follow me." And the angel ordered. So Peter left the cell following the angel. But all the time he thought it was a vision. He didn't even realize it was actually happening. And they passed the first and second guard posts and came to the iron gate leading to the city. And this opened all by itself. So they passed through and started walking down the street. And the angel suddenly left. And Peter finally came to his senses. "It's really true," he said. "The Lord has sent his angel, saved me from Herod and from what the Jewish leaders had planned to do to me." And when he realized this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where many were gathered for prayer. And he knocked on the door of the gate. And a servant girl named Rhoda came to open it. And when she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the door, she ran back inside and told everyone, Peter is standing at the door. You're out of your mind, they said. And when she insisted, they decided it must be his angel. And meanwhile, Peter continued knocking. And when they finally opened the door and saw him, they were amazed. Can I sum up this passage? This is something the Lord had spoken to me several years ago that I want to bring to you today. When you read Acts chapter 12, verses 5 to 17, the Lord has said to me, he said that the church, or we, are in a place where we can't go forward, but God is going to open the door. We're not going to have to open the door ourselves. We're not going to have to pick the lock. We're not going to have to kick it open. The Lord is going to open the doors. Secondly, he's going to be at work and we're not even going to know what's happening. And all of a sudden, out of nothing, out of the blue, you're going to think that you're still walking the same road. You're going to think that all of this is just a dream. And then you're going to realize, no, it's really happening. And all of a sudden, the people are going to rejoice at the sound of your voice. And I am believing that this church is going to be given a platform at some point in the future where all around here, people are going to hear your message of the goodness of God, His faithfulness, how He restores marriages and how He breaks the shackles of addiction, how He does all of these things. And they're going to rejoice because Satan couldn't stop it. He tried to shut you up and he tried to hold you down, but God opens doors that no one can shut. And He closes doors that no one can open. And so God is moving. He's moving here. He's moving around the world. People are getting saved at an enormous rate, like never at time in history before. We tend to look at what's happening in America or what's happening in the West, but I want to tell you, God is moving. People are being saved. People are being healed. People are being set free. There are victories in the spirit realm that we cannot see with our natural eyes, but you can trust that it's happening. So what do we do? Well, first of all, Creekside, you must prepare. You need to get ready. You have to prepare. The angel ordered Peter to get up and the chains were... I love the fact that the angel came and woke Peter up, and it said that he smacked him. Anybody in the room need to be smacked to wake up in the morning? You know, now that I'm 51 years old, I turned 51 a few weeks ago, and I don't have to be smacked to be woken up in the morning. You get to a certain age, young people, I want you to hear me. I'm going to speak to you from the future, okay? You get to a certain age where you don't actually wake up in the morning. You just stop sleeping. And it gets earlier and earlier. I go to bed between 9 and 9:30 usually. And there are times I go into bed tired and I'll stop sleeping. I'll look at the clock and it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, wow, I get 2 nights sleep tonight. It's like finding $20. But the angel comes in and he smacks Peter and he wakes him up. And I want you to notice the pattern. He orders him to wake up, the chains break off his wrists, and Peter obeyed the command to go. And you have to notice the pattern, write it down, memorize it, but miracles follow obedience. Miracles follow obedience, and obedience is preparation. I know that some of you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. I thought that miracles followed faith. I want you to understand something about faith. We tend to think that faith is risky behavior. That if I'm going to step out in faith, it's going to be a risk, and that faith looks like risk. Let me tell you it this way. Faith doesn't look like risk. Faith looks like obedience. Faith is following God's voice even though no one else hears it. Faith is doing God's will even though people don't understand it. That's not risk. That's real safety. There are some people who don't give up on stuff that God is clearly not blessing, and they say, it's faith. It's like, no, it's not necessarily faith unless God told you to do that thing. Liam, would you bring me my phone real quick? I want to, I'm really sorry. I felt really bad for Michelle this morning hearing her cough. I've been through that myself, going through the recovery of COVID. And when I was in COVID, this kind of made me think of this morning, is that this whole deal about how do you spell Abraham? There we go. When I was in the hospital with COVID, I was kind of laying there trying to hear from God, and I thought, Lord, will you please speak to me? I want to hear God. I want to hear your voice like Abraham heard your voice. How many would love to hear God speak to them like God spoke to Abraham? Anybody? Just the three of us? Okay. No, that's cool. No, that's cool. No, we want to hear like Abraham did. And I was praying that. And I didn't hear his voice audibly, but I almost heard it as though he said, really? You want to hear my voice like Abraham heard my voice? So I did a little study. How many times did God speak to Abraham? Have you ever looked into that? Not only how many times did God speak to Abraham, what did God say to Abraham when he spoke to him? Well, I'll tell you. God spoke to Abraham 7 times. From the time he was 75 until the time he died. Interesting. He spoke to him in Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 13. Chapter 12, he was 75. He spoke to him in chapter 12, 13, 15, 17, 18, 19, and 22. That's a lot of times. What did he say? The same thing every single time. I will make you into a great nation. Like seriously, do I really want to hear God tell me the same thing? One time he didn't. That's when he said he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. The other 6 times, I'm going to build you in a great nation. Go to a land that you haven't known. Go forward, go forward, go. He always said the same thing. This is what that tells me. The life of obedience that Abraham had was a life of obedience. The life of faith was a life of obedience. And we as the church have to continue doing the last thing that he told us to do. Don't deviate, because miracles follow obedience. When he tells us the way, go the way. We're not to make up our own way. We're not to figure out something else. We're not to look and say, this isn't working. We have to keep going in a different direction. We need to change directions. And some people misunderstand this. That's why, church, hear my heart. Pastor Eric needs you to pray for him. Pastor Eric needs you to encourage him to continue following what God has told him to do, because I don't know if you understand, but it takes incredible courage to pastor a church. Because pastoring is hard. There's a lot of joys, but there's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of armchair pastoring. But if you will commit to walking in obedience to the Lord, and if you want to see and experience God's blessing in the church, pray for the one that God has called to shepherd you forward. Imagine what it would be like leading your family, and everybody is saying, go right, go left, go forward, go backwards. But you have a map. Can God speak to everybody in the church? Absolutely. That's why we encourage churches to pursue unity. Unify together, praying for, encouraging Pastor Eric. Because sometimes what God says doesn't make sense to human ears. But always choose obedience. Do what God says and keep doing it. We also read that everyone in this account was asleep. Peter was asleep. The guards were asleep. And there was a difference in their sleep. Peter was trusting God because he knew God was in control, couldn't see it with his eyes, and God granted him sleep because he was trusting the Lord, whereas the guards, it's like God shot them with a tranquilizer dart. Peter was asleep in God, whereas the guards were asleep, and it was God-induced. And as much as the devil, our adversary, wants to work against the church and hold the church back, I believe that God will cause him to be distracted. He will miss what God is doing. He will think that he is seeing victory, but all along he is being defeated by our heavenly Lord. It's happening around the world. And sometimes when we are following God as a church, and we think, no, we can't do it that way. If we do it that way, Pastor, if we go that direction, it's not going to work. And sometimes, look, I heard from God, and we've talked to the leadership, and we're in agreement. Back when I was just in undergrad, and I was taking a class on Old Testament theology, I remember my professor, his name was Scott Bullerwell, Dr. Bullerwell, and he was telling a story which I'll never forget. So you may or may not know, but I'm from Canada, and we had a different law about traveling to Cuba than Americans did up till recently. We could actually go to Cuba. And what we would do as a church family in the assemblies, is we would send missions teams. And what we would do is we would have these huge hockey bags full of hygiene, toothbrushes and all that kind of stuff. But they also had a bag full of Bibles, which were illegal to bring into Cuba. And so they get to the airport, and they see all the customs agents there. And there's this little discussion on the team saying, how are we going to get these in? And so what they figured they would do is have everybody go into one line with all of their hockey bags, like 30 hockey bags, thinking there's no way they're going to check them all. So what they did was they all went through the thing thinking they would overwhelm the customs agent. And when they went through, the customs agent asked a very pointed question to Scott Bullerwell. Do you have any Bibles? Well, what would you do in that situation? Is that one of those moments where you say, Lord, this is going to not technically be a lie? What would you do? It's not even an ethical dilemma. So what he decided to do is this. Well, why don't you look for yourself, he said. And wouldn't you know it, the very first bag, or one of the first bags he opened, was the bag of Bibles. And he looked at Bullerwell, who was leading the trip, and said these words. We have been praying you'd come. What would have happened? What would have happened if they would have grabbed the wheel and took matters into their own hands, and rather than obey the scriptures, which tell us clearly to be truthful, to not try to accomplish goals of the Spirit with tools of the flesh, what they did was they opened up, through their obedience, a window to miracles, and to this day that story is being told. I can prove it. I just told you. And everybody on that trip experienced themselves how faithful God is to his word. And so this all sets up the angel's command to Peter to prepare to move out. First, the angel says, get dressed, put on your sandals. I mean, that makes sense. You can't have Peter running out of prison without shoes or clothes on. I mean, this is the Bible. But then he says, now put on your coat. Now, I have never escaped from prison, okay? I've never fulfilled my time. I've never been to prison. I've, though, watched prison escape movies. And this is what I know. If I ever escape from prison, I am prepared to leave some things behind, like my coat. But the angel says to Peter, get up, get dressed, now there's a sequence, now put on your coat, now walk through the door, now do this, now do that. Like, if it were me and those chains fell off, yes. You look just like Pastor Eric, by the way. Those chains would fall off, the doors would open, and I would be gone. But what happened was, the angel was giving specific instructions, and I think what he's saying is this, friends, preparation is more important than speed. Living a life of obedience personally and living a life of obedience corporately takes time. Anybody can be obedient the night before. Are you able? Are you able to walk in obedience for a long time? I love, Eugene Peterson has a book. It says, what is it, Walking Obedience? Oh man, I just lost it. It's from the Ascent Psalms, where it has to do with walking in obedience in the same direction for a long time. Are you able to do that? Are you willing to do that? If you want to see God move through the church, walk in obedience in the same direction for a long time, because preparation is more important than speed. And the Lord is bringing this church from here to there. He is doing it, but you have to be prepared because God opens doors fast. All of a sudden, when you didn't even expect it, an opportunity comes. That's why it's tough if you're spending all your money on whatever comes. Oh yeah, well, spend it there, or investing time everywhere, and all of a sudden, everybody is so tired, or you're always like living from paycheck to paycheck and booked solid, and have no time for the things of God. You may miss what God is doing because He opens doors fast. I think it's fascinating. After all that's happening, verse 9 says, the whole time Peter thought he was dreaming. He thought he was having a vision. God was moving and doing miraculous things, and Peter didn't even realize it. He thought he was imagining everything. He didn't even know what was happening. All of a sudden, bang, the doors are open. He's got to go. Think about that. God is already answering your prayers. You just don't see it yet. It's kind of like that farmer. Jesus tells a parable, the farmer plants the seed, and then it's like nothing's happening. And I picture that farmer every morning going to the kitchen window and looking at the fields and just seeing gray, just seeing dirt, day after day after day. But he's not dismayed because he has faith. And one day, what does he see? A light carpet of green. It's been happening the whole time. But what happens while it's preparing is that it's subterranean. You can't perceive it, but with your spirit. And all of the sudden, it's there. I remember when Jennifer and I were first married, before Liam was born, we were struggling financially. We needed her to get a job. She had just graduated from dental hygiene. She's a dental hygienist. And I remember it was like a Friday morning or a Saturday morning, and we're just laying there talking about the future. And I remember saying to her, do you realize that everything can change in a moment? One phone call, and you could have a job. And she's like, boy, and I am telling you the truth. The phone rang, and there was a dentist who hired her on the spot. We happened to know him, but we didn't even know he was hiring. And in a moment, God moves fast. Now, when I say He moves fast, so this is what we have to understand. It's not that He says He's going to do it and immediately does it. He doesn't move fast that way. It's kind of like the parable of the persistent widow, when He says that when the Son of Man comes and He's coming quickly, it doesn't mean He's coming quickly from that moment. It means that when He comes, it will be quickly. It's like we don't even perceive it. And all of a sudden He's there. It's like, where did you come from? When God opens a door, He does it fast. And why does He do that? Why does He let us go through that point where we're like, if He's moving the whole time, and we think, man, we try everything and it just doesn't seem to work? And at the end, when you're in a successful season, people are like, how'd you do it? You're like, I don't know. Nothing I did worked. Everything seemed to be failing and breaking apart. And there's a reason why it's like that. There's a reason why it's like that. There's a reason why the enemy attacks you and discourages you. He wants to get you to stop, but God does what he does because he won't share the glory with anyone. And the hero of your story is not your church. The hero of the story is Jesus Christ. You will serve, do your best, but all of the glory goes to God. Do your best, let God do the rest. He will orchestrate events. He will raise up leaders. He will increase influence. He will give incredible victories along the way, but the glory will all be his. Otherwise, you're not a church. If you can do it in your own strength, why would we pursue the presence of God? Well, like, think about it. What do you do as a church that the most effective atheist organization in town cannot do? It's to live by faith. It's to live in obedience. To get from here to there, God gets the glory. We see this to be the case in verse 10. They pass by the first and then the second guard post, and they come up to an iron gate. And it opens, it says, all by itself, although it really means it seemed like all by itself. But in reality, God opened the door. He didn't know, how on earth do you open an iron gate? You can kick it all day long. You can run it, it's not going to open. God opens the doors. Would you rather walk through a door that you can open or a door that God opens? Like, this isn't the grocery store where you walk in and there's that motion things, and you walk through. Hey, I'm pretty bad. No, this is a door that you thought was locked forever. It was gone. The dream is dead. And then God comes and he does this amazing things and he opens the door. This is where so many churches get into trouble. They see God do work in the early days. They have the miraculous stories of how you got the building or how you got the people or how people got saved. And at some point, we get our greasy fingers on it and we decide we're going to do it our own way. And it's imperceptible. Like, it happens so fast. Little by little, we start doing things in our own strength and we say, well, where's the power? Well, you tell me. God won't share. It's almost like he's saying, fine, if you want to do it yourself. It's like my kids, right? Like they would come and, Dad, can you untie my shoe? This happened just the other day. Liam had his shoes tied too tight, and Dad, I can't undo the knot. Actually, he was a lot younger. And it's like it's all knotted up. And so I'm like, absolutely, I got a job, And so I'm sitting on the lazy boy, and I hate that name. It should be like worked hard all day boy, But anyway, so I'll be there, and I'll start untying it, and I'll get one knot loose. I got it from here. All right? He's going to finish it now, and he brings it back, and it's worse. He says, Dad, I'm sorry. I'll get a little bit more done, and he takes it back, and it gets more knotted. It's like, man, can we just let God start the work and finish the work? Didn't he say that he is faithful and just to complete what he started? Like, we can trust him from day one to the last day. If the victory is his, let him fight the battles. This is what we have to get our mind around, that this is where people get into problems. People have tried to take the glory. Now, it's happened in Scripture, where what happens is like trying to take the glory or trying to take things in your own hands. It's almost like trying to wrestle for equality with God. Do you see that? It's like, okay, God, you got us here. Thanks for your help. We're going to take it the rest of the way. You got us here, but we've got it from now. And the problem is that God doesn't ever tolerate that, and it's not something that ever works. And think about it. In the garden, the temptation for Adam and Eve was to eat the fruit, and if they did, they would be like God. So they went for it, and they were cast out. The Old Testament, Ezekiel and Isaiah, says that Lucifer tried to become equal with God, and he was cast down. The only one that ever had a claim to equality with God was Jesus. And Philippians 2 says he did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, and he was not cast down, not cast out, but he was lifted up. And so when we look at the church, say, this is the one we serve, let's let him carry the ball. So in the future, let me just say that God's plan for Creekside is already unfolding in a greater way than anything you could ever imagine. But watch out for the temptation to take matters in your own hands. Don't worry. Don't argue about strategy. Don't try to perform your ministry with your own strength and not with prayer, without Holy Spirit empowerment, without surrender. No, you may be tempted to serve with grumbling and refuse to move forward. And when God is calling you forward and say, well, I need more answers. And don't say no to the direction of God for this church. Pray, seek God's wisdom. Pray for your pastor, be encouraging. Don't check your brain at the door, but also understand that God is already working. Our job as believers is to walk through the doors that God opens. We pray, then we obey. Because God is already working. Verse 11. When God is moving you from here to there, he will be doing a whole lot behind the scenes before you even realize anything is happening. I love it when I come home and Jennifer hasn't been at work. She's been at home, and I walk in and find out that dinner is already being cooked. Don't you love it when you wake up in the morning and you can smell bacon? You're laying in bed and you're hungry, and you find out that somebody's already making breakfast. Can I tell you something? God's already got something cooking. He's already at work. And little by little is he showing you what that thing is. I find that to be encouraging. I find that to be exciting when you finally discover it. Put your trust in God even when it seems like everything is dead. You know, sometimes our dreams, sometimes our hopes have to be put in a tomb so that God can raise them up. And some of you people who have been here for a long time, you're like, man, when are we going to realize the dream? Well, I'm thankful, A, that you're asking that question, but I'm also thankful that you're at a point where God is going to breathe life into it. So, like, I look at the chairs, and we're in the summertime, and there's some empty chairs, and you may look at it and say, wow, man, we're people. No. I see that you put those chairs up as an act of faith. Those chairs are going to be full. And they're going to be full not just because somebody got ticked off at the church down the road, but there are people who are lost and broken and dying without Christ. And when this whole thing unfolds, they are going to rejoice at the sound of your voice, and together you're going to sit under the preaching of God's word. You're going to be transformed by the renewing of your mind and into the likeness of Christ day by day. And you won't even see it happening, but it's happening because God's got something cooking. He's already doing it. He's already preparing the way. He's already setting the table. This is where the real battle of discouragement is fought. I imagine that Pastor Eric knows it well. Because before verse 11, Peter didn't even know that God had already been answering the prayers. He thought he was having a vision. He thought he was having a dream. And I believe that Creekside is going to have an incredible impact on the entire world. And this morning you may be here and think it's always a bed of roses for the pastor. It hasn't been. There have been disappointments along the way. There have been times when the enemy perhaps spoke discouraging words to his heart. I know that it has. probably at times even said, God, are you even at work here? Or am I dreaming the whole thing up? You may wonder why. Why is it that way? Why doesn't God make it easier? It's because just as we are saved by faith, we serve by faith. We're never going to get there except through pain. And by faith, we stand up when we want to lie down. By faith, we put on our sandals. By faith, we put on the clothes. By faith, we put on the coat. And by faith, we need to walk out. That's why Isaiah 41:10 says not to be afraid. I am with you. Don't be discouraged. I'm your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. And we can trust that he's already working because God is committed to his purposes. In fact, he is more committed to his purposes than he's committed to our plans. He's going to see it through because his name is on it. He is the one. He's the victorious one. And we're the ones that are like, we're like the entourage. Like Jesus is the victory, and we're like walking behind. Yeah, you know. It's kind of like, you ever see the kids of famous people? Like you have this famous person who's sold millions of records and whatever, and their children are like, and you're like, dude, like, what have you done? You were just born. But their confidence is that the victorious one loves them and has brought them in. And you know what, as believers, even though we didn't fight the battle, we share in the victory. And we're going to be encouraged. God is committed to his purposes. And finally, in verses 12 to the end, others will rejoice at the sound of your voice as God unfolds his plan before you. When Peter realized that God had set him free, he went straight to the house of believers that were praying for him. And he knocked on the door. And the servant girl Rhoda answered the door and heard Peter's voice. Rejoicing, she left Peter outside because they didn't even think it happened. I think there's a bit of humor in the writer here because early in the story, the guards couldn't keep Peter in, and now they won't. The church keeps him out. There's actually something more than humor going on here, though. The excitement of his freedom outside the house is in stark contrast to what's happening inside the house. These believers were in a prayer meeting at night in a house because of the persecution. They're hiding. They're scared and they're hiding, and James is now dead, and now we're going to lose Peter too. And friends, as you know, it's hard to be a church that stands for God, especially when the cultural headwinds are against us. That's why getting from here to there is hard. And if you watch the news at all, you know that it's just getting harder, don't you? Like, you see laws that are passed. Even when things that happen that are good, it gets harder for the church. I hope you rejoice when Roe v. Wade was overturned. But friends, I want to tell you something. It's going to get harder for the church. Because there's a lot of people who are thinking that the church took away their rights. Now, clearly, we may see it differently, but really, that's neither here nor there. The more good things happen that favor the lordship of Christ, the harder it's going to be for the church. In fact, last night I was at a restaurant, and never done this before, ever. I go in, and there's this one steakhouse that is all over the country. I'm not going to mention it only because they didn't pay me to advertise for them. It's too bad, too, because it was a good steak. And I went in, and I said, how long for a table for one? It was way too long. And he said, unless you want to sit up at the bar. I'm like, I'm not in Des Moines. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't think that. I thought, yeah, I'll do that. I'll be in and out. So, as the kids say, I bellied up to the bar, ordered my steak and soda water. And I'm sitting there eating, watching a baseball game, and the guy next to me starts talking to me. And he starts talking about travel. He's traveling too. And he says, so what do you do? I thought, well, I'm a pastor. And I really thought the whole thing was comical. I said, I'm a pastor. I said, I'm not actually pastoring a church now. I actually am in a role where, I come alongside other pastors. He says, really? So we start talking. And he goes to church too. And he starts saying, well, I'm not going to tell you what denomination it is because they didn't pay me. And so I'm not going to give them free advertising. But he says, how are you guys handling a lot of the cultural issues that we're facing? He says, our church is being torn apart. Our whole denomination is splitting over it. And so we started talking about the work of the Lord. And one of the things that and we must have talked for 25 minutes, and he kept apologizing. I don't mean to have you talk shop, he said. It's funny when people talk about, talking about things the Lord is talking shop. But we started talking about the lordship of Jesus and how in the Assemblies of God we're committed to living according to the Scriptures. That we don't just change what the Scriptures say because it's convenient. And we know that when we make those commitments, the headwinds are going to be strong against us. That if we say, well, the Bible doesn't give us permission to do that. That's sin. Well, who do you think you are telling us that something is sin? We say, well, I'm going to live for Jesus and brace for impact. That the Lord is good. And so here we are, and there's all these people sitting there, and we're talking about the goodness of God. We're talking about Him. And in the end, he leaves. I invited him to church this morning, but he had to leave the hotel early. And one of the things that we were talking about, and it was just occurring to me, was it's getting harder and harder for the church to be the church. It's becoming difficult. But it really isn't becoming difficult. It's always been difficult for those who seek to be faithful and obedient to the Word of God. And so I believe this. If Creekside Church if you commit yourself to being faithful and obedient, just like Peter at the house, there are going to be people that rejoice at the sound of your voice. If you talk about Jesus, if you are the one who is the answer to the prayers that they have been praying, then it's not that they're going to rejoice at the sound or the timbre or the tone of your voice, but by the words that escape your mouth. If they glorify Jesus, it is like water to a parched soul. If you're able to say, let me tell you about Jesus who heals. Let me tell you about Jesus who said, you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know who's listening, but people will rejoice at the sound of your voice. And so, I think I can answer the underlying question. We've been talking about getting from here to there. Where is there? There is there. Because what the realization was, now we look back and read Acts chapter 12, the story isn't only about Peter escaping from jail, it's about the gospel making it to Rome. It's about the gospel going forward. It's about the gospel not surviving, but winning. It's his victorious right hand. And so let me close. Biblical commentators write that this story is about more than meets the eye. And the way it's written, it alludes to the Exodus when God led his people out of slavery into the promised land. In other words, this story is a here to there story, but between here and there is a long and winding path road. It's kind of like, the definition of a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Well, in the kingdom, the shortest distance between 2 points is often a zigzag. It's like God doesn't do anything straight. Everything is like winding and through lots of pain and a lot of turmoil, a lot of persecution, because God's Spirit, He empowers us to go forward. And following God as a church often, I would say always, leads through suffering and persecution. And I want to read you a quote, and Michelle, if you want to come with your team, I want to read you a passage of one of John Knox, who is a reformer. And what I'm going to read to you is very, very special to me. And I'm going to entrust it to you. It's one of those things that I tend to kind of want to keep to myself and very selectively share with others because not everybody gets it. People get discouraged and people get disappointed and people think that when trials come that somehow it means that God isn't pleased with them or that God isn't moving. And so with saying that, close your eyes and just hear these words, because I believe this is for somebody today, except for those who are requiring the services of the interpreter, of course. If Satan fume and roar against you, whether it be against your bodies by persecution or inward in your conscience by a spiritual battle, do not be discouraged, as though you were less acceptable in God's presence, or that Satan might at any time prevail against you. No, your temptations and storms that arise so suddenly argue and witness that the seed that is sown has fallen on good ground, has begun to take root, and shall by God's grace bring forth fruit abundantly in due season and convenient time. That is what Satan fears, and therefore thus he rages and shall rage against you, thinking that if he can repulse you now suddenly in the beginning, that then you will at all times be easy prey, never able to resist his assaults. But as my hope is good, and so shall my prayer be, that you may be so strengthened. Now listen to this. That the world and Satan himself may understand and perceive that God fights your battle. Do you know why you go through the trials right now? It's so that the world will see you victorious and see that God fights your battle. This church, you've had battles along the way, haven't you? Let the world see that God fights your battle. When you're discouraged and want to give up and just don't think you can go any longer, let the world see that God fights your battle. You don't have to fight it. You give it to him. What I want to do is, in just a few moments remaining, I just want to turn the room into a prayer room, and if the worship team would sing softly behind. If you want to come and pray or just stay where you are to pray, we'll close the service shortly. But I just want to encourage you that God is fighting your battle. Not just so you will have an easier life, but so that the gospel will change lives through you. He wants you to experience the victory that he's fighting for. Will you commit yourself to living for more than just ease and comfort, but being all sold out and radical for Christ? Being a part of a church that is growing and ministering. Heavenly Father, we just come to you now and thank you for your word. Because God, it is a good word. And I believe, oh God, it's falling on good soil. That you are opening up doors and setting us forward. We may not even see it now, but there'll come a day, and that day will be soon, where you enlarge the platform for your own glory. There are those that are discouraged here today. There are those that are here today, God, and they're just like, I don't know if you've called me, that you love me, or that you've empowered me. God, I pray right now that your Spirit would fall and touch and minister, strengthen, in Jesus' name. Friends, would you just take a few moments as the worship team sings, find a spot and pray, and just commit yourself to what God is doing, because he's going to open a door, and he's going to open it quickly. That even today you begin to commit yourself to living in obedience, preparing for what God is setting the door for. Michelle, would you sing? Would you pray? Would you reach out to the Holy Spirit right now? Lord, empower us, we pray.